This is my ranking of historical grand strategy games that I've played, based purely on my personal experience. Each one is placed from masterpiece down to trash, depending on how deep the strategy systems are and how well they reflect real history. Let's get straight into the list. Crusader Kings III changed the way I look at grand strategy games because every campaign created stories that felt personal instead of mechanical. I spent as much time dealing with marriages, betrayals, murders, and family drama as I did fighting wars or expanding territory. The stress system made rulers feel human since their personalities affected many of my decisions, and I liked watching kingdoms fall apart because of bad heirs or reckless choices. I also loved how different cultures, religions, and lifestyles opened new ways to rule across each campaign. Even losing wars created memorable moments because characters could die, become rivals, or completely destroy alliances. I spent hours building. The interface looked cleaner than most strategy games, although managing armies still became messy during large wars. This easily belongs in my masterpiece tier. Hearts of Iron IV provides me with some of the deepest military strategy gameplay I have ever experienced because nearly every decision affected the outcome of a campaign. I spent hours managing supply lines, production, politics, division templates, air superiority, and resource shortages while trying to survive massive wars across the world map. I liked how the game rewarded planning instead of reckless attacks since weather, terrain, infrastructure, and logistics could completely destroy even powerful armies. The alternate history paths also made campaigns far more replayable because smaller nations could rise into major powers through smart decisions and careful alliances. Some naval and air systems felt unnecessarily confusing at first, and late-game performance sometimes slowed down huge wars, but the scale and depth still kept me invested for hundreds of hours. This stands proudly in my masterpiece tier. Victoria 2 became addictive once I finally understood how its economy, politics, population systems, and industrial management worked together across long campaigns. I spent a huge amount of time balancing taxes, trade, reforms, military growth, and public demands while trying to modernize countries during the industrial age. I liked how smaller nations could slowly grow into powerful states through careful planning instead of pure military conquest alone. The population system also made campaigns feel alive, because different social classes reacted to political decisions, economic problems, and changing living conditions over time. The learning curve was extremely difficult at first, and late-game revolts sometimes became frustrating when entire nations suddenly exploded into chaos, but the depth kept me coming back anyway. Few strategy games made me feel this involved in shaping a country's future across decades. This belongs straight in my masterpiece tier. Imperium's Greek Wars felt like a strange mix of familiar civilization-style gameplay and much deeper management systems that only started making sense after several hours. At first, I thought it was a simpler strategy game because the map design, city building, and expansion mechanics looked straightforward, but higher difficulties completely changed how I approached every campaign. I had to pay attention to slave populations, unrest, influence, diplomacy, state decisions, and military training instead of just building armies and conquering cities non-stop. I also liked how different factions encouraged different tactics depending on terrain, unit strengths, and political situations around the map. The visuals looked outdated even when the gameplay became more interesting, and some systems explained information very poorly during campaigns. Still, once everything clicked together, the game became much more rewarding than I initially expected. This goes to the good tier. Europa Universalis IV gave me the freedom to create alternate history campaigns that constantly evolved in unexpected ways across hundreds of in-game years. I spent a massive amount of time managing diplomacy, trade, colonization, warfare, alliances, religion, and internal politics while trying to grow nations into global powers. I liked how aggressive expansion penalties stopped campaigns from becoming mindless conquest because expanding too quickly could unite entire regions against me. The ideas system also made different nations feel unique, since I could shape countries toward military dominance, trade empires, or colonial expansion depending on my strategy. Some mechanics like trade and mercantilism felt difficult to fully understand even after many hours, but the game still remained addictive because every campaign created different political situations and rivalries. This easily claims a place in my masterpiece tier. Knights of Honor II Sovereign was a simpler medieval grand strategy experience that mixed kingdom management with real-time battles across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. I liked building armies, handling diplomacy, managing resources, and slowly expanding my territory while balancing wars and internal stability across the kingdom. The real-time world map made campaigns feel different from turn-based strategy games, and some large-scale conflicts became satisfying once my economy and military finally started growing properly. At the same time, the pacing often felt far too slow because armies, construction, and resource production all took a long time to progress. The tutorial also explained systems very poorly, so learning many mechanics became frustrating during the opening hours. Even with those problems, I still enjoyed parts of its large-scale medieval sandbox and kingdom-building systems. This earns a place in my great tier. Hegemony Gold Wars of Ancient Greece gave me a very different kind of historical strategy experience because supply lines and logistics mattered just as much as winning battles. I spent a lot of time protecting farms, managing food routes, defending mines, and trying to keep armies supplied while expanding across ancient Greece. I liked how enemy raids could completely disrupt campaigns, since losing crops or resources forced me to rethink entire offensives instead of blindly pushing forward. The large, seamless map also made campaigns feel immersive because battles, movement, and empire management all happened in real time without loading separate battle maps. At the same time, the tutorial explained important systems very poorly, and combat often became messy once battles actually started because units moved awkwardly during chaotic fights. This belongs in my good tier. Age of History 2 started much better than I expected because the early game made expansion feel slow, risky, and earned instead of instantly handing me massive advantages. I liked how different civilizations created very different levels of difficulty, and the colonization system also became surprisingly enjoyable once technology started reducing the cost of overseas expansion. Unfortunately, the longer the campaigns lasted, the more problems started appearing everywhere. Diplomacy became completely broken because tiny trades could force major nations into pointless wars, while many normal agreements barely worked at all. Combat also lost most of its strategy during late-game wars, since giant army stacks ignored terrain and overwhelmed everything through sheer numbers alone. I also kept running into strange bugs involving diplomacy, economy systems, and army behavior that slowly ruined long campaigns. This ends up sitting in my mediocre tier. Ozymandias Bronze Age Empire. Sim takes place during the Bronze Age and focuses on building a civilization across historical maps filled with real ancient cultures. I expanded territory by claiming hex-based regions, managing food, wealth, knowledge, and power while competing against neighboring kingdoms for valuable land. Each civilization came with different strengths that changed how quickly cities grew, technologies developed, or armies expanded. Combat stayed simple with armies and fleets, but positioning, city defenses, and resource management still played a major role in every conflict. Instead of conquering every rival, victories came from collecting crowns through military achievements, economic growth, technological progress, and population development. The shorter campaign length kept decisions meaningful because every turn affected the race for victory. This lands in the great tier. Field of Glory Empires became much more interesting once I realized the game focused heavily on managing provinces, resources, manpower, and long-term expansion instead of non-stop warfare alone. I liked building different regions, balancing culture and economy, and trying to maintain strong armies while dealing with neighboring powers around the ancient Mediterranean world. The variety between factions also made campaigns feel distinct, because Rome, Carthage, Macedonia, and smaller nations all approached growth and warfare differently. diplomacy was easily the weakest part of the experience, since nations constantly behaved irrationally and declared pointless wars without much logic behind their decisions. The real highlight came from exporting battles into Field of Glory 2, because manually commanding those large historical battles added far more excitement and meaning to each campaign. This earns my excellent tier. These are the historical grand strategy games that stood out to me the most from everything I've played so far. Thanks for watching.